Hello and welcome to the Parkinson's Foundation's Care Partner Summit. I'm Krista Ellis, your host for today's program. We're so grateful to have you here as we begin this special three-part series dedicated to supporting and empowering you, the care partners, who provide invaluable strength and compassion each day. At the Parkinson's Foundation, we're deeply committed to addressing the needs of not only those living with Parkinson's disease, but also those who walk this journey alongside them. Through innovative care, impactful research, and community support, we strive to enhance the lives of everyone affected by Parkinson's. Now, to help us kick off this series, I'm honored to introduce our Chief Executive Officer, John Lair, who will share a few words. John?
Thank you so much, Krista. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Parkinson's Foundation's Care Partner Summit. As Krista mentioned, I'm John Lear, the President and CEO of the Parkinson's Foundation. We are delighted that you'll be spending the next few hours with us, and we put together a terrific program that we believe is meaningful and helpful to all those living with and affected by Parkinson's disease. Today's program is focused on the unique roles and responsibilities of care partners, particularly around the issues of adaptability and resilience. As we know that any disease like Parkinson's requires the love and support of many others, from spouses to children to family members, friends, and neighbors. We are very pleased that November is recognized as National Family Caregivers Month, and we want to thank and acknowledge all the care partners on the call today for the work they do each and every day, all year long. So thank you very much for joining us. And with that, I'll turn it back to Krista Ellis.
Thanks for being here today, John. As I mentioned, our Care Partner Summit is a three-part webinar series this year that will address the various chapters in the journey of Parkinson's. Join us throughout the month of November for our Care Partner Summit webinar series designed specifically for you, someone supporting another with Parkinson's. Whether you're new to the role or have been caring for a while, these webinars will offer valuable strategies for managing Parkinson's and maintaining strong relationships while also navigating daily challenges with confidence. Our expert panelists will share insights and practical tips to support you every step of the way. You can learn more details about these programs by visiting the website at parkinson.org/summit or scan the QR code on the screen. We hope that you'll continue to join us for these webinars designed specifically for you. Now let's take a look at what we have planned to share with you all today. Here's a quick overview of our time together so you know what to expect. We'll start with an insightful presentation from Dr. Bradley McDaniels, followed by a panel discussion featuring members of your community who will share their experiences and perspectives. After the panel, we'll come together to set our group agreements, which will guide us as we move into our breakout sessions. In the breakout sessions, you'll have the chance to connect more closely, share, and explore today's themes. We'll then gather as a full group to highlight some common insights from each session. And to close, Dr. McDaniels will offer concluding thoughts, and I'll share additional resources for you to explore beyond today's program. I'm looking forward to a meaningful session today. To begin our formal presentation, I'd like to introduce our presenter for today's webinar. Dr. Bradley McDaniels is an assistant professor at the University of North Texas, where he coordinates the Rehabilitation Studies undergraduate program. His research centers on well-being and quality of life issues, focusing on meaning, purpose, positive psychology, apathy, and psychosocial adaptation among individuals with chronic illnesses and disabilities, particularly Parkinson's disease. Dr. McDaniels is dedicated to enhancing understanding and support for the psychosocial needs of those affected by chronic health conditions. Brad, thank you for sharing your time and your expertise with us today.
Thank you, Krista, for the kind introduction. Let me get on here and find my slides. So let's go to the next slide, please. Thank you. Just a quick slide to report. I have no conflicts regarding this. I'm not being compensated in any way for this. And all thoughts are my own. Next slide, please. So learning objectives, as Krista started, one of the things that we want to talk about today is how do we instill adaptability and resilience for caregivers, right? We talk a lot about the people with Parkinson's, but frequently we neglect the caregivers. So we're going to talk about those. We're going to talk about how do we adjust to the day-to-day challenges of Parkinson's disease, of caring for someone with Parkinson's disease. I'm going to talk a little bit about some tools that you might be able to use to implement to help you deal with the challenges, the emotional strain, all of the things that you're used to dealing with on a daily basis. And then at the end, we'll talk a little bit about the emotional strain that's associated with this and how we can enhance that well-being and just have this be the best experience you can have while caring for your care partner. Next slide, please. So, again, I'm just going to reiterate everything that I share today. Typically all of this stuff applies to the individual with Parkinson's disease. And so you may have heard this before in other presentations you've been in, but all of these things are important for the care partner also to consider. So as most of you all on this call know, when a diagnosis of Parkinson's disease happens, there is a lot of reaction that goes with that. There's distress. You've got all of these new obligations in life, right? It could be that your demands change, your role in the relationship changes, and there's stress associated with that. There can be reactive depression that happens at that point, and it's a lot of unknowns that occur almost immediately, a flood of emotions that happen. And many of these things we're not prepared to address. We don't have the training to deal with the challenges that we're being faced with. And so there's some fear associated with that. And one of the things that's interesting to know is research shows us that it's often more distressing for the care partner than it is for the individual with Parkinson's disease. And that's, I think that's lost in a lot of the conversations that we have. I think if we look at the medical community, frequently the people whom I do research with, Indu Subramanian, she talks about how important it is to have the conversations with the care partner as well. Because when they're not well, the person with Parkinson's disease doesn't have optimal quality of life. So it's important that we address both ends of the spectrum in this relationship. One of the other things that is frequently a problem early on in the diagnosis, and it really continues throughout, is this social isolation, right? This feeling of I'm alone. My loved one has just been diagnosed with a chronic illness, and I'm unable to do the things that I used to do. I'm unable to leave the house, maybe because I'm fearful of a potential fall, something might happen. And that can eventually result in loneliness. And there's been a lot of research since COVID-19 looking at the ramifications of loneliness. And they really have cause a lot of issues in health, depression, anxiety. There's even some relationships between loneliness and mortality. So it's important that we remain connected. Lastly, on this slide is the potential loss of self-identity. We might in a relationship, we're not sure what that dynamic looked like, but that might change dramatically now. Someone who was the potential or the main carer in the home may not be the carer anymore. Someone who was the provider may not be the provider anymore. And so those things can really affect the care partner and influence the emotional responses that we have to this challenging time. Next slide, please. So why adaptability falls short, right? So what are the things that end up causing the strain in our lives as we're dealing with this new time? One of the things in positive psychology that's talked about on a frequent basis is this idea of intolerance of uncertainty. And intolerance and uncertainty is really just responding negative to changing situations. And some of that is a trait, which means it's just part of who you are. But that can also be adjusted through interventions and through changes that we have in life. So when changes happen and we're not able to effectively deal with them, depression, anxiety, things of that nature can follow. The other piece is this lack of training I mentioned in the previous slide, but it may be like me before I got into the world of Parkinson's disease. I really didn't know anything about it. I knew Muhammad Ali and I knew Michael J. Fox, but I didn't understand the intricacies of Parkinson's disease. And that may be where you were at too when you were thrust into this world. And then there's the physical demands, right? Maybe now I'm having to take care of my loved one and do things that I'm not used to doing. The stress of my daily life, always feeling like I have to take care of things. And, you know, even some of that, it's a simple mind shift of thinking I have to versus I get to. That's the positive psychology component that can make a lot of difference in our emotional outlook on how things are going. I already mentioned the social isolation. That is a major issue with any chronic illness and or disability that people run into. Lack of personal time, right? All of a sudden, most of my time is spent caring for someone else. And, you know, there's even guilt associated with that, that I feel like I'm not being able to do the things that I want to do. I'm not spending the time with the things that I enjoy. And I can feel guilty if I want to take time away and go do those things because I feel like I need to be there constantly for my loved one. Fear the future, right? Parkinson's disease is such a heterogeneous disease, right? I early on in my training in PD, I learned that if you know one person with Parkinson's, you know one person with Parkinson's, right? Because nobody's trajectory in this disease is the same. And so we don't really know what tomorrow's going to look like. We don't know how disabling this condition might be. So there's a lot of fear and anxiety associated with that. We also probably have limited resources. I meet people on a regular basis who ask me, where do I go for information on Parkinson's disease, right? Those of us on this call know the Parkinson's Foundation. There are a variety of other organizations that offer great resources for people. But sometimes that's a challenge to figure out which resources are good and which ones maybe aren't so good. Poor coping strategies. We're going to spend a little more time in a couple of slides talking about that. But what are the things that you do to help you deal with the stress, the anxiety, the emotional toll that caring for someone with Parkinson's disease might take? And it's important that we talk about those things and are able to address them. Next slide, please. So what are some of these coping strategies, right? We all are familiar with a lot of these. I'm going to highlight a few of them. External help is a critical component, right? Am I able to reach out to other people? Can I accept help? You know, one of the things that many of us may struggle with is thinking, I have to do this alone. This is my responsibility. Rather than looking at Parkinson's disease and caregiving as, you know, it's a group effort, right? I can learn from other people. I can take advice from other people. One of the other things that I think is great is to keep an attitude where you have some humor, right? Things that happen in our daily lives when we're caring for somebody, sometimes those things are funny. And it's accepting that, being in a place where those things that are funny, I'm able to enjoy and lean into. The other thing, meditation. I think there's a lot of talk and confusion both about meditation. Meditation is really staying in the present moment, learning relaxation techniques. There are a variety of apps that are available on the internet, on your phone, that can help you practice meditation, breathing exercises that can help you remain grounded and remain calm, that are really helpful to our emotional outlook. Physical exercise, right? This is one that it's always important to talk about with care partners, because as you go to appointments with your loved one, you invariably hear the movement disorder specialist say, are you exercising? How much are you doing? And I think that one of the thoughts that we have is they need to be blah, 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 right? Doing these things. And we forget how important it is for us to also remain physically active. That's good for our emotion. It's good for our cognitive functioning to remain active. It helps our bodies stay strong. Music, right? There are so many different things that we can use to help us cope adaptively to things that are going on. The key is to find something that you enjoy and that you're willing to do on a regular basis. It might be taking a walk in nature, having a conversation with a close friend. It might be spirituality, faith-based practices that are very commonly used as a way to deal with stress in life. So these are just a few options to think about as you move forward. So next slide, please. Please click. There we go. So what are some things that people who are adaptive, what are the traits that they have in common? Open-mindedness is one of the main traits. And when we think about open-mindedness, we're ability to seek and accept feedback, right? We kind of have an idea how we think things should look, how we think this process should go. Maybe that's not always right. And so sometimes it's just asking for help. It's saying, you know what, I'm really not sure what to do in this situation. My loved one is having this struggle. How might I be able to do things differently? And it's letting other people share their experiences with you. It's things like this that we're having today, where you have the opportunity to interact with other people and talk about those things that maybe you don't talk about and learn from other people. One of the other key components of adaptive caregivers is flexibility, right? Because we talked a little bit about how we don't know the trajectory of Parkinson's disease, every day is going to be different. And I can have a plan for what tomorrow might look like, but things might change. And am I able to adjust? It kind of goes back to the idea of intolerance of uncertainty, right? Not being able to handle when things aren't going the way that I want them to go. And it's being able to say, you know what, I'm going to adapt, I'm going to change, I'm going to shift the way that I'm dealing with this problem and try something different. It's also creativity. Can I think of different ways to interact with my care partner? Can I think of different ways to creatively help them engage more with their care? Maybe it's through exercise. Maybe it's through the way that they eat, their nutrition. Can I be creative in helping that not maybe become such a mundane activity and really become more of something that can be enjoyable and change on a daily basis? Resourcefulness, right? Knowing what's out there and available to me and using it, right? It's one thing to know that the Parkinson's Foundation is there and that they have a lot of resources, but am I using them? Am I able to take the things that I'm learning and bringing in and learning how to apply those on a daily basis? And we talked a little bit about pausing coping strategies on the previous slide. And probably the main characteristic of adaptive caregivers is resilience. And so the next slide, we talk a little bit about that. What is resilience? Resilience is really the ability to bounce back, right? That when something happens in life, sometimes something negative happens in life, sometimes we take a step backwards and we feel like we're struggling emotionally and cognitively and socially and all of those things. And then over time, hopefully, we begin to get back to where we were before. One of the interesting things about resilience is there's another construct in this area called, just completely lost my train of thought. We'll keep going with that. Sorry about that. But according to the World Health Organization, resilience and supportive environments are necessary for people to thrive. It's a critical component. And one of the things that we have seen is sometimes people get back to a baseline, to normal. Sometimes after we'll call it a traumatic event, right? Because I argue that a Parkinson's diagnosis is a traumatic event. Sometimes people end up better after that event. That's called post-traumatic growth. And that's been an area in positive psychology that's really been looked at, is why is it that some people, after something that really is challenging in their lives, why are they better after that? And there are some things that are associated with improving like that we're going to talk about. But all of these things at the bottom of this slide, resilience is associated with better self-related health, lower mortality, less cognitive impairment. So basically all of the things that you would want in your life, right? Better mood, better relationships, less anxiety. Resilience is associated with all of those things. So I believe that resilience is one of those things that's critical for us to seek after, and we can learn resilience. It's not simply just a trait that we're born with, right? Next slide, please. So ways to develop resistance, right? One of them is celebrate small wins. I think one of the challenges that we all fall into is when everything doesn't go the way we want it to go, we end up falling back into a negative mindset. But it's not always an all or none, right? Sometimes a small win is the one that you loved chose to go exercise today. Maybe the rest of the day wasn't great, but let's celebrate that one thing that was good, right? One of the other critical components to resilience for those who are resilient is having a strong social support network, right? Having people in your life like those who are on this call who have experienced caregiving and living with Parkinson's disease, and having that connection and seeing the wins that other people have. I think one of the challenges in any group settings is sometimes it's easy to fall into talking about everything that's going bad, all of the struggles. I think when we see a really successful support group, it's when people begin talking about what have they done to overcome. Let's talk about the things that are going really well. Also, it's learning to embrace change. Change is going to happen and it's going to be different tomorrow, right? And so it's accepting that and just saying it kind of is what it is. And I'm going to make the most of the situation that I have today. Setting realistic goals, right? When we achieve goals, we become more resilient. So we don't want to set goals that we can't achieve, that I want to, with my care partner, I want to exercise for 2 hours a day, 7 days a week. That may not be a realistic goal. Maybe we just say, I want to exercise on a regular basis this week, right? Something that I can do. Turn challenges into lessons or opportunities, right? Again, we go back, I talk about positive psychology a lot because our mindset determines largely how we feel and behave. And so I believe that when we look at the challenges that we encounter in life, that rather than looking at it as a negative, say, this is an opportunity for me to grow. This is an opportunity for me to learn. And it's an opportunity for us to have a better relationship and for our experience with Parkinson's to be better. And then finding meaning in the journey, right? Meaning is frequently something that's lost when a chronic illness creeps into our lives, particularly when you're a caregiver, right? Your meaning might have been taking care of your care partner. Maybe you were the one who took care of things in the home, and now you can't do that anymore. Maybe you were the one who worked every day to provide. You can't do that anymore. Those things might have been your meaning. Now it's a time to focus on finding that meaning again in life. Next slide, please. So what are some things associated with effective caregiving? You need to listen and validate feelings, right? Our care partners have struggles, just like we do. Spend time listening and hearing what they have to say, letting them know that their feelings are okay. What they feel is what they feel, and they don't need to do anything differently. Reinforce rather than correcting, right? When something happens that they're doing something good, let them know that they did something good. Don't always tell them when they didn't complete a task or do something that maybe they were supposed to do. Encourage rather than nag. This comes up anytime I'm talking to support groups of rather than asking your care partner, when are you going to go exercise? Maybe it's, why don't we go exercise together, right? That's an important piece. Don't demand, offer help. How can I help you with this? What are the things that you might be able to benefit from with my assistance? Lead by example, right? The things that we ask the person with Parkinson's to do, the things that the doctor suggests, again, I said at the beginning, are all things that we should probably be doing as well. So maybe if I'm engaged in exercise, they might be more engaged. If I'm taking care of my diet, maybe they'll take care of their diet, right? And lastly, offer choices, right? Do you want to go walk today, or would you like to actually go to the gym? Would you like to have this to eat, or would you like to have that to eat? It's just an easy strategy to help someone not feel like they're being put into a corner. Next slide, please. So final thoughts. Here are some things I think that bring all of this together. I think it's important to know that you can't pour from an empty cup, right? If you are not functioning well, if you are not dealing with life in a positive manner, if you're depressed, if you're anxious, that's going to pour over into your loved one, and it's going to impede your ability to be able to give to them, right? We can't give something we don't have. And so it's important for me to take care of myself. What does that mean? I need to take time to exercise. I need to take time to get together with my friends and do things I enjoy without feeling guilty. Part of that goes into the next bullet point, which is boundaries isn't a 4-letter word. Boundaries are critical in all relationships, right? Learning how to set effective boundaries, letting your care partner, the one whom you're caring for, let them do the things that they can do. You don't have to do everything for them, right? Set that boundary that it's okay for you to say no. It's okay for you to take time out. It's okay sometimes for you to bring somebody else in and let them be with your loved one while you go do something that you need to do for you. Essentials, our support is essential, right? Having this support network, having this group of people whom you can engage with, whom you can do life with, whom you can have conversations with about the challenges you're facing and also the wins that you're experiencing along the way. Mindfulness, we talked about that. It's such a simple way to help our mindset, to help remain positive, and to help reduce our stress. A lot of ways we can practice doing that. You know, gratitude is something that's not talked about nearly enough in the world of Parkinson's disease or chronic illness. The research on the positive impacts of gratitude is amazing. It does anything that you want to feel better about, begin having more gratitude, and you'll see that. Gratitude is simple as start a gratitude list every night before you go to bed. Write 3 things you're grateful for. Don't repeat each day. Write 3 new things. Your attitude will gradually begin to change, and you'll begin to realize that you always have more to be grateful for than not, right? And again, finding meaning in life. What are the things that you enjoy? What are the things that you value? How can I spend more time doing those things? And that's what's going to bring me a sense of purpose in life, right? It's all of us want to have purpose. All of us want to have meaning in life. And even though you might feel like you've lost it, it's never too late to get that back. So find ways to cultivate meaning and purpose in your life. And lastly, counseling is always available. Just because we are the one who is now the caregiver doesn't mean that we don't also need to engage with some counseling. So if you're struggling with maybe setting boundaries and you don't know how to do that, if you're struggling with some depression, some anxiety, some apathy, it might be worthwhile to seek somebody who can help you walk through some of those things and help you realize that you're not alone, right? And you can connect with other people and hopefully begin to get back on the track where you want to be with a positive mindset. Next slide, please. That's it. Thank you for the time and the invitation to talk today. I always enjoy doing these kind of talks where we can talk about things that we can do just to improve our daily lives. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Brad, for sharing these tools that are accessible to us in our daily lives. And it's not just our Parkinson's community, but also the public in general. I really appreciate the way that you've outlined the possibility of implementing these simple tools. They sound simple and they are so impactful. So thank you so much for sharing the way that you do in such a compassionate way. I appreciate you. And now we'll hear from our community members during a panel discussion. Joining us is Barbara Leffler, Lori Russell, Patrick, Terry, Tanya, and Brad will be guiding that discussion. Go ahead, Laura.
Hey everyone, welcome to this presentation from the Parkinson's Foundation regarding the Care Partner Summit, right? We're excited to get together today to talk to some different care partners about adaptability and resilience and what role those play in their lives as they've interacted with their loved ones. So let's just jump right in. And the first question that I'd like to ask is, talk a little bit about what strategies you found to be most effective in adapting to the changing needs of your loved one.
The thing that helped from the very beginning of the diagnosis was that we realized that we needed to get some psychological professional help because it was going to be a completely new frontier for my husband, myself, and our whole family. We had young children at the time. And we immediately got into individual counseling and family counseling. And during the whole progression of my husband's disease for 17 years, we were in therapy, and it helped us through each of the changes that occurred. And it was really invaluable, and that is, it was a godsend for us in order to adapt through all the changes that Parkinson's brought.
When we first got the diagnosis, we were pretty devastated, as many people are. And within a few months, we were able to get into the PD self-efficacy program, which really turned our lives around. We would say it saved our lives. We became close to like-minded people. We learned about every aspect of Parkinson's disease and how to take charge of what we could take charge of. And it really addressed so much in terms of resilience and made such a difference in our lives. We realized we weren't alone. We had other people to reach out to, and we've remained close to 12 of those people through all these years and reach out to them. We could pick up the phone in a minute and get somebody on the phone to comfort us or to comfort them or just share what's going on. In addition to that, we also got into couples counseling, and Gary got into individual therapy as well. And we're in palliative care, and all of those pieces are, a big support to us. I would say the other thing that really helped, with my background as a psychologist, I like to do a lot of research. And I just learned every single thing I could about the disease at that time and continue to do that. And that makes me feel like I have more choices, that I can cope better because I know as much as I possibly could about what's going on. And it gives you a sense of efficacy. It gives you a sense of control when there's so much that you can't control.
Great, thank you.
In our case, my wife Yuta was diagnosed in late 2021. And first of all, we weren't really that shocked by it. She had an inkling that she probably had it, and it was due to her just recognizing she had a tremor that was giving her some issues. We really weren't, the neurologist we initially worked with didn't really give much of a prognosis and really didn't provide us with much, and we didn't know what we didn't know. Just by serendipity, we had a neighbor who was very involved in the Parkinson's Foundation and really pushed me into getting us as a couple involved in a newly diagnosed group. That was the best thing that ever happened to us, because it helped me to recognize those things I didn't know and not feel bad that I didn't know them, and rely on others to help me to seek out those things that I felt I needed help with at the time, because that would mean that I was willing to listen and take the advice. As a result of that, me in particular, got really involved in the newly diagnosed groups And we now, as it turns out, we live in a small community. We have 3 neighbors within walking distance that have since been diagnosed. And I've found it pretty fulfilling to be able to steer them to that same group much more rapidly than we jumped into it. I mean, other than that, we've adapted the way we live our lives. The responsibilities have changed. And, in some ways, some of them are kind of good. I kind of enjoy cooking now, but, we're still continuing to learn, and now we're going to be graduating from this newly diagnosed group, and it's going to start all over again. So
There you go.
that's where we are.
That's great. Thanks, Pat.
I think one thing that we've learned, my partner was diagnosed in 2017, and we were always really good with communication, but this certainly upped our game, because when you think about adapting as the disease progresses, really recognizing that there are big things that are noticeable that obviously you need to talk about, but there are a lot of small things that happen on the daily that if you don't bring them up and bring them out, you can't resolve them or deal with them. And so we're learning to just simply ask, how is today specifically with this disease? Or is there something you need from me that I'm not taking care of for you? Even something as simple as saying, are you ready for help with that? Instead of jumping in and doing, like learning ways to communicate with each other so that I know what he needs, but then, he's not expecting me to read his mind and I'm not expecting the same from him. It's easy to kind of get complacent in the communication department and take over as a caretaker.
That's great, Terry.
Terry, we used to use the term, I can't read your bubble. It's can't read the bubble.
Yeah, I'm pretty clairvoyant, but not here. So.
Tanya.
When my mom was diagnosed a little over 6 years ago, I think a strategy that really helped me and continues to help me is to take a moment and just try to see the situation from her perspective. When she was initially diagnosed, I'm like, okay, we need to learn everything about Parkinson's disease. We need to find the support groups. We need to find the best doctors. And I think she was just in a whirlwind and it was coming on too fast for her. So when I was able to step back and just allow her to kind of guide her care or steer the direction we were going in, she ended up finding her own support group. Does she still participate, exercise and support group that she still participates with today. So even now, if I feel like I know what's best, I truly probably don't from her standpoint. So just being sure to elicit that from her and then take that into consideration and not just kind of bulldoze ahead and assume that I know best for her.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Those are all great responses. And, there were a variety of topics that came up from those responses that I could go down a rabbit hole. But one of the things that I heard was the counseling piece, right? And I'm curious, from the care partner perspective, have you gone to counseling to help you adapt to these changes? And what difference has that made if you have?
I still have the same counselor.
Okay.
My husband's been gone for 2 years, so I've been with her now 20 years. And we had individual sessions. He would go in for a session, I would go in for my session. And
Right.
then we would have joint sessions, at the end of the appointment, because we knew that we each had different issues that we were dealing with that needed to be addressed. And like I said, we found an amazing therapist that was able to help us. And at the end of the disease, he had to go to get his own therapist because we were dealing with a lot of psychological issues, and it was necessary. And he didn't trust having, psychosis was insidious at that point. But it was invaluable to me to have my own therapy in order to deal with, my husband was dying. I had to grieve that while he was alive. And so it was very valuable to me that I had that resource.
Yeah, that's great. So let's keep that thought in mind if you have something to add with that. But talk to me a little bit about adaptability and resilience. What do those mean to you? Number one. And number two, how do you cultivate those things in your daily life? Do you have any strategies that you use?
Brad, in my case, what I found was maybe because of my accountant personality, first of all, we're not really outgoing. And second of all, everything's on spreadsheets, particularly the aspect that I do. And so I can't count on that anymore. I now recognize that not only I wake up every day and know that I need to assess where my wife is and need to be able to adapt. We will have a plan for the day. Well, that plan may not work that day. And it was hard to accept that you needed to kind of change on the fly. And then throughout the day, things can get better, things can get worse for that day. And I found as soon as I started to accept that and didn't make too many commitments to others that could be disrupted by our situation, I found life to be a lot easier. So I think it was recognizing that, whereas it used to take you 5 minutes to get ready to go to the store, it now might take 15. And don't try and force it into that 5-minute pocket, because it's not going to happen. That was creating a lot of conflict with us. And so, that's one adaptation that I had to get much more flexible and a lot less critical of not achieving what was the goal 20 minutes ago.
Yeah. Flexibility is great. That's a great point, Pat.
I think one of the things that we're finding is having a reality check. So, is this a problem we need to solve today, or is this something that we can figure out together in the next few weeks? So basically one of the phrases we use is the house on fire, or do we just need coffee? So are we planning a vacation that going to take a little bit more time, or are we planning an evening out that we really need to get ready for immediately? And really kind of being flexible with what is it that we need in this moment and what's realistic for us to take on as a couple. I think also humor. I mean, we laugh all day long around here, and that hasn't changed since diagnosis. And we have a regular gratitude practice as well, that we talk about what we're grateful for. Once a month, we have a moment where we write down what we're grateful for. And those things, being flexible, practicing humor, practicing gratitude, all of those really kind of help us prepare for the storms that we don't know are on their way in. So it's a lot more proactive than reactive, I think. And I think that when you're thinking about adaptability, being reactive can often get you in trouble. And so when it's possible, being really proactive about what might come your way, we found that to be pretty helpful.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I love the comment about gratitude and the value that brings to helping us realize that we still have things to look forward to. Everything's not over, right?
Mm-hmm. I think that's a really good point, Brad. We were just talking about, Gary and I, about how important it is to have things to look forward to, even tiny little things. But we have tickets for concerts, films, going to museums, taking little trips. Saturday, we drove up to the mountains to see the leaves changing. We live in Colorado, and it was a glorious day. But just moments like that. And I think that really helps you bounce back. I mean, resilience is really about, bouncing back. And I think for me, exercise really helps me. I guess it was about 6 weeks ago, we started noticing Gary getting some additional symptoms, some progression. And I felt like I was kicked in the stomach. I felt like it was almost like when he was first diagnosed, but not that bad. It wasn't as long lasting, but it was a familiar feeling. And I knew that I just needed to exercise, to do mindful meditation, to go in the garden and be with the flowers and the birds, and have a cup of tea. And I think reaching out to people when I'm ready to talk about it is so helpful. We also thank each other every day. I think there's not a day that goes by that we don't say thank you for this or thank you for that. And that helps to get through each day. And I think that these practices, and I'm thinking particularly of the exercise and the meditation, it really does create kind of a little armor or something that when there is a tough time that comes along, you have more energy to attend to it in a way that's not reactive. And I think that's been really helpful for me.
Yeah. I think that's a great point, Barbara, because, we understand from the literature, exercise is an important component of resilience, but so is doing things that you enjoy. You talked about going and looking at the leaves. That's a critical component. So thanks for that.
Mm-hmm.
With the disease progression, we found that my husband, he had to grieve continuously. And it would go at the beginning of the disease, it was, it took longer for those outbursts of grief to happen. And we had to allow him to do that, but at the same time, not to get overwhelmed by that grief of the losses that he had. And we always made sure that we made the list of all the things that were still there and he could still do and that were so amazing in his life. That always outweighed the things that that had changed. We tried to make it so that it wasn't that he lost, they changed. And just changing the way that you use your terminology, it changes the way that you think. And it changed that he was like, okay, hey, my life's not that bad. I still can do all this. And my nickname for my husband he was my Superman. And he really wore that moniker, in order to get him through his disease. And he fought and he fought. But you have to allow both of your, the caregiver and the patient to grieve during this whole process. It has to happen, and if you focus, you have to focus on the negative, but also the positive of all the things that are in your life. And it's a wonderful life, even with Parkinson's. And when you get angry, make sure that you're identifying what you're angry about. It's the disease that you're angry about, not your care partner, not the patient. It's the disease that you're angry about, and identify that to each other. That I'm really angry at Parkinson's today, but I'm not angry with you. Thank you for your help, and thank you for being you. And that really got us through some really difficult times.
Yeah. Great point.
To add on to that, because we're hitting on the grief part of this, and for me, what I've noticed is that we're kind of constantly in kind of a stair-step cycle of grief, so that we figure out where we are with symptoms, we figure out where we are with what kind of supports we need, and then we have a little bit of a dip. Another symptom surprises us, and then we go through the cycle of grief all over again, and it takes us a bit to figure out we're in a cycle of grief, and then things level out and they stair step down, and we go through another cycle of grief for something new. And I do think that ties directly into adaptability, because you have to be prepared for the reality that you're going to stair step down over time. Each time it will surprise you, even though you know what it is. And it's one of those things that, again, you have to stay in communication and gratitude around, but it will knock you on your knees sometimes and surprise you until you sit in reality and say, oh yeah, that's, we're grieving something new here. Learning to adapt together is critical to that.
Yeah, that's great, Terry. Tanya, did you have something to add on to that?
Yeah, and thinking about resilience as a care partner, I think for me, something that's been super helpful is making my own self-care non-negotiable. And sometimes there's guilt involved in that, or having to demand your time to say, this is something I have to do for me. And I think implementing that in my life and then making it a priority has really allowed me to be there for my mom and allowed me to maintain my own sanity at times. So I think that's just been really important. And that may look like going to the gym, taking a walk, going to yoga class, or just being alone. So it's been super helpful and allows me to be resilient and to kind of go with the flow or roll with the punches, as you know, with Parkinson's, as it often pans out that you have to do.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's great, Tanya. And you led right into my next question, because I'm hearing the talk about grief, right? And the importance of the patient grieves, but the care partner grieves too, because your life changes. Everything's different now. So talk a little bit about how do you take care of your own, what does your self-care look like? Taking care of mental health, your physical health, right? Because you can't be there for them if you're not well, right? Let's talk about what that looks like.
Mhm.
Along those same lines as I was just mentioning, for me, it's prioritizing my physical health and my nutrition. I'm a registered dietitian by trade, so I can kind of fall back on things that I've just learned throughout my career. So prioritizing putting healthy foods in my body and really getting up in the morning. Something for me, I'm up at 4 a.m. and I go to the gym, and I have like friends at the gym who are insane and there at 4 a.m. as well. And so that is like my me time. And I kind of chose that time because I know my phone won't ring at 4:30 in the morning. So that's time that I know I can have to myself, and it feels guilt-free. So that's been a main thing that really has supported me, and something that I look forward to in just kind of maintaining my own mental and physical health.
Yeah, that's great, Tanya. Anyone else have strategies that they implement?
I think exercise really it sounds so cliche. Get more exercise, but the reality is I started exercising just after Jeffrey's diagnosis because I can't pick him up off the floor, right? I need strength, I need core strength, I need balance. That I don't have those things, and if something happens, I'm going to be at a loss. And so I started working out for him, and then I realized that it's really for me because it gets my sillies out. It lets me kind of rest. It really kind of gives me time alone to be by myself, and every now and then he'll come with me to the gym. He has his own regimen, but he'll come with me and we'll do it together. So it's become like a couple thing that we do together as well. So exercise is often something people pass over initially and think, oh yeah, I'll get to that. Do it now. It's more important than we often realize.
Mhm.
Right, Terry.
Yeah, and I mentioned that before. I totally agree. And again, the meditation, the stretching, yoga type moves, just stretching your body and relaxing it, escaping through reading, just going to a different place. And oftentimes when I'm on the treadmill, I'll be listening to a book that'll take me someplace else. And I think speaking up about what I need at times in the moment. This just brought up last summer, we took a trip to Europe and we were gone for 3.5 weeks. And we encountered something that we did not expect. We had a stressful day, the day we were leaving, for a variety of reasons. And stress makes Parkinson's disease worse. And so by the time we got to the airport, Gary was having difficulty walking, and we had to get a wheelchair. And this was the very, very first time that we had to do that. And throughout our trip, we had some long days of traveling from getting one place to another. And Gary said, I don't need a wheelchair. I can walk that far. And it occurred to me after the second time that I needed a wheelchair. I needed him to have the wheelchair. And it occurred to me, and I just said to him, you know what? I know you can walk that far, but I know what's going to happen at the end. You're going to be really tired, and it's going to be a longer day, and I'm going to have to be doing this and that. I need for you to have the wheelchair. And he looked at me and he said, thank you for telling me that. Yes, we'll get a wheelchair. And that was taking care of myself.
Yeah.
Okay, I was just going to say, on the exercise side, I agree with that. That's always been part of my life. It's not usually been part of Utah's life. But after her diagnosis, we discovered that it was an opportunity for us to actually do something together, but not in the same room. We happen to have a unique opportunity wherein we have a fitness facility, two of them in our neighborhood, but one of them is not used very heavily. And there happens to be a daily class that is centers on balance and gait. And often the class is one person or up to three. Any one of those combinations, everyone will happen to be Parkinson's sufferers. And so we can walk over to that class. I can go into the regular gym. She can do her class. So she's with people that she has some common interests with, and they get to enjoy each other's company. I can go work out primarily by myself. But then, so we're in the same proximity for that hour, and then walk home, and we both feel like we accomplished something. And we've really benefited from her going to exercise classes 4 days a week now, where she hadn't done that for years. So I do agree with that.
That's great. Lori.
One of the things, Barbara, that was a wonderful story of how you advocated for yourself. And that is so difficult to do as a caregiver, because it's like, I don't have the disease. How can I speak up about my needs? It's that internal guilt that we have so often. And the thing is that, like talking how Terry said before, I can't read your mind. Well, our care partner can't read our mind of all the struggles that we're going through. So we need to advocate for ourselves, and that will help our care partner, because they'll understand the struggles that we're going through. And the open communication is how we take care of ourselves. And we have to not be afraid that we're going to hurt our care partner's feelings by our needs, because you will more than likely find that they are so thankful for what you're doing for them, that they want to make your life better as much as they can. So please communicate as much as you can. And one of the things that I found is I needed to step away at times for my sanity from the Parkinson's community. Our life was so wrapped up in everything Parkinson's, and I needed to step away because I hated Parkinson's at the same time. So if your whole life revolves around Parkinson's, and it's also something that you hate, it's a love-hate relationship, you know what? I needed to balance that. So I needed to step away. And Barbara, just like you said, you escape in your stories. It was a wonderful healing item for me. But also just going for a drive and just not thinking. It was very, very important in order to get myself rebooted. My counseling rebooted me, but don't be afraid to communicate your needs, because they're so important.
I think that's a great point, and it leads into my next question. I know we're getting ready to wrap up, but being able to advocate, I think we heard an example just today about when we're together in a group, you hear someone comment and you go, yes, that's where I'm at. So let me just quickly ask, what role does social support, being around other people who can understand where you're at, what role does that play in your resilience, your adaptability?
I think that's huge for us. As I said earlier, that you're not alone. You're with people who totally understand what you're going through. There's a kinship that you don't have with anybody else. And it's wrapped around each other's hearts. You are just joined at the heart with this love and support, and there's nothing like it.
It's great.
I would add to that there are three things that I think we've figured out just from our research and our time with support groups and just from our personal experience that really make a difference. And that's the food you eat, the way you exercise, and your social connections. And that's just as important for our person with Parkinson's as it is for us. And so I think it's important that you have a three-pronged approach so that the person with Parkinson's has a social network as well. That's all their own, that they can find their support with, that you have something that together that you do. And for us, that's a retreat once a year, or every now and then we'll go to a Saturday support group or something like that. But then the caregiver have their own separate and apart support system as well. So, Jeffrey understands sometimes when I need to go have a drink with some friends, I need some time to myself. I need to refuel. And I think that can't be discounted as well. I think it's just as important as exercise, honestly.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Support system.
that's great. Other thoughts about support system, value of it for you?
One
Well,
of
I
the
think
things that
interaction with outside, I'm sorry, I keep interrupting somebody. I find that whereas I used to play golf 4 days a week, 1 day a week I would play with my wife and three others with a bunch of group of guys that got together and played golf. I've had to pare that back to 1 day a week. And I actually have to kind of caution myself as we start that, okay, now I'm talking with someone that isn't dealing with all of the underlying, my wife and I are together a lot. We both know that the disease is there. And I find that I can become a chatty Cathy if I'm not a little careful, because it's like I can have a conversation that doesn't somehow have to go back to dealing with how are we going to accomplish this? How are we going to accomplish that? My golf game has gotten terrible and I don't care. They have to deal with that and they kind of look at me sometimes, but I really value those 4 hours together. And fortunately, I have a son that's in the area that comes and takes care of his mom while I do that. So I can have a kind of a running game. But that's very important to get some time. I spend a lot of time with all of our friends. We spend a lot of time with our friends that have caregiver situations. But sometimes you need to get away from that. And I find one of the things I struggle with is allowing like spouses of these fellows I play golf with to help me out, because they're always offering to come and relieve me. And I'm not good at accepting that. And I think that's very important, to learn how to accept the kindness of others.
Yeah, that's great, Pat. Lori, Tanya, last thoughts on social support?
I'd say it's been everything during this whole journey with me and my mom. And I agree with Patrick. It's wonderful having the support and friendship of people who are in a similar situation. All of you and the people that I've met through the foundation has been invaluable, and not having to explain what Parkinson's is or the feelings that you're having as a care partner. So that's amazing, but also having friends that have nothing to do with Parkinson's disease. That's my high school friends, my college friends, wonderful, and not speaking about it and just laughing and talking about anything but.
Yeah, that's great.
The beauty of the support groups was that you were able to meet people that might have been on a different level of the journey than you were. And you didn't have to reinvent the wheel. They already took that journey and they were able to help you through part of that journey with their knowledge. And that helped us so much. And I am such a strong advocate of the support groups, whether it's for the care partner or for the Parkinson's patient, because it's like an encyclopedia at your fingertips. It's Google search right there. Everybody they're going to be going through some of the same stages that you're going to be going through. It might be a little bit different, but use those resources. Don't reinvent the wheel. Reach out to these individuals. We want to give this information because we didn't go through this whole ordeal without learning so much, and we need to pass it along so that the disease didn't have a meaning. We need to help others with what we learned.
Yeah, that's so good.
I'll do that for really quickly when we're talking about support groups, because I don't know about the rest of the panel, but I was frightened to go to my first support group because I wasn't really I was telling myself I wasn't really mentally prepared to sit in this disease with other people because that's a vulnerable thing to do. And so I guess what I want to add on is that if you're someone watching this and you're like, I can't do that, I'm too scared. Give it a try. You'll be surprised at what a difference it really does make to be around people who understand what you're going through. And yeah, it'll be scary, but you've done scary things before. You could do it.
Yeah. So this has been such a great discussion. I think we've heard a lot of pearls through this talk today. And I think that one of the things that we end on is we talked a little bit about the support and the value of other people and how critical it is to have our emotional tank filled, right? I teach my graduate students all the time. I say, you can't pour from an empty cup. So if you're trying to help someone else and you're not okay, it's not going to work well. So I think that you guys have shared some really important things that those who are watching are going to be able to grab onto and take some of them, whether it's diet, whether it's exercise, whether it's support group, whatever it may be. They're going to have some tools that they can walk away with and hopefully have some better days ahead. So thanks everybody for all your thoughts and sharing today.
Thank you, Barbara, Lori, Terry, Patrick, and Tanya for sharing your story so courageously and your lived experiences. I really, really value the way that you show up for yourselves and for your community as a role model here, instilling what resilience and adaptability looks like for you and your loved one living with Parkinson's. So next we will move into our breakout session. I'd love to review some group agreements before we settle into a more intimate space. It's important for us to establish some guidelines to get the most out of our time together. Each breakout room will be assigned a moderator. The moderator is present to support the dialogue and keep us on track. And please know that the conversation you have in your breakout session is not being recorded. Your conversations will not be shared beyond the room. I hope that gives you a sense of ease and encourages you to speak up. Please keep your conversation focused on the themes of adaptability and resiliency. There's so much that we could speak to in a closer environment, and I would really appreciate if we focus the conversation on today's subject of adaptability and resiliency. Please respect each other's time and listen actively. Allow participants space for everyone to share. We want to avoid anyone sort of dominating the conversation, so be mindful of how much space you are claiming for your share. Importantly, please avoid giving advice. We're here to learn from one another's journey, not to offer advice. Everything shared in the space is confidential, and just affirming that what's shared in the group stays in the group. On the more technical side of things, please keep yourself muted unless you are speaking. So you're about to have the power to unmute yourself. Would really love if you would respect that power and only unmute yourself when it's your turn to speak. And once you've completed your share, please mute yourself again. If you're having any technical challenges, please click the button that will say leave the room. That will bring you back to the main space and our team will troubleshoot with you. Lastly, let's keep a supportive, open mindset as we learn from one another, and thank you for helping create a positive experience for everyone. We'll see you back after the breakout. Danielle, you can start shuffling us around in our breakout sessions. Welcome back. So curious to hear some themes, some words that might have come up in your breakout sessions. Brad, if you would join me, and Danielle, if you would, so everyone can see us together.
Yeah.
Good. Awesome.
What great discussions.
Yeah, it was so good, right? I
Yeah.
had the privilege of sitting in on one, and I want to thank everybody that I was able to connect with today. Would love to hear from our session moderators, and I will go down my list. If Mary Jane, would you share some common themes that came up in your group today?
All righty. So we had a wonderful group and it was very open and a lot of discussion. I did take notes and I'll just start with the last one, most recent, because he was right in the middle of talking whenever we left. But it was as a caregiver to set the goals for future activities, something to look forward to. And he was talking about planning to take vacations. You know, it's always nice for our person with Parkinson's as well as us as caregivers to be able to share and think that there's something to anticipate and something fun coming up. We also talked about grief and how it impacts us. And with that, the stair steps to grief that was already brought up. We thought that was a really good point to realize that we're all kind of going through it, but we're all at different stages. And so we discussed that. But another key thing that came out that was really, really good and brought out in this program and Bradley's talk, as well as the panel discussion, was not feeling guilty. It's so easy to feel guilty, especially when our caregivers want the me time. And they thought that that was really, really good to give permission to be able to have that me time and not to feel guilty. Another thing regarding the nagging, we were talking about the nagging and that sort of thing, was it was nice to have a phone to be the nagger and have the alarm set to remind someone when to take the pills, when to go exercise. And that was another good point that came up. And that's how they, rather than nagging, they go on and use the phone as the major nagger. And then another one is a question that had come up was how do we learn about support groups, or how do we get in support groups? And so we all shared about that. I shared, you know, many of the foundations, of course, Parkinson Foundation right here, that you'll have the help number that they can contact, the help number, and that could find the support group for them in their area. And so I was sharing about that. But again, just talking about, and lastly, was to refuel, how they do how a lot of our members in our breakout session refuel is to get information to have a better understanding about Parkinson's, better education to learn, to be able to identify the options that are available in regards to exercise, in regards to different webinars, take one day at a time and stay in the present moment and being mindful for that day. So it was a wonderful group. It was my privilege to be a part of that breakout session. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Mary Jane, for offering the reflections back from your group and being such a beautiful representative of what was shared there. Appreciate that. Nicole Lessard, would you like to share some themes from your group?
Sure, I'd love to. Thank you. We had a wonderful group on our side. I think some common themes of things that people have found helpful is certainly, again, finding a support group, certainly ones that have a breakout time for the care partner was certainly valuable. A lot of people were sharing about some of the challenges as the journey with Parkinson's continues to progress over time, and people may have issues with hallucinations or cognitive change. Obviously, that makes it very difficult, and just trying to use patience, use humor sometimes to kind of cope or to try to deflect from that actual situation to not only help themselves, but help the person with Parkinson's along the way. We had a lot of discussion about how things over time and our roles were evolving, and also not just our roles as the caregiver, right? But like thinking about maybe that person with Parkinson's had, like a high performing job as a professional, right? And now it's a little bit different than the person that I married, right? And how do I adapt? Or they took care of a lot of the things on the day to day, and now those things are on my shoulders as well, right? And then trying to integrate those things. And people were sharing some tips along the way. We heard things about making lists, using a whiteboard, because maybe using a phone for reminders is no longer helpful. So thinking about what tools can we employ to not only make things easier for our loved one, but also for us as well. That seems to be helpful. Yeah, and again, I think changing expectations again. This group, I thought, shared a lot of great examples of being very resilient and being adaptable, but just acknowledging again, it's not easy. So, I think everybody was sharing and seemed to feel pretty comfortable. And I think just showing up today and being a part of this is a really important step. So thanks everybody for sharing.
Great. Thanks so much, Nicole. Appreciate you. Carla.
Thank you, Krista. So some of the themes that were talked about in our group, we discussed how support groups and exercise groups like Rock Steady Boxing and those sort of types, how they can help with resiliency, not only the benefits obviously of movement, but the camaraderie that comes from meeting those individuals and the care partners of those individuals, and the kind of the excitement that when you connect with somebody that's going through a journey that you may be on a similar journey, that they get you, that they understand you, and not feeling alone. So just the communication benefits of connecting with those individuals and feeling more understood. Talked a little bit about self-care, and one of our participants said part of the self-care was her letting her partner know how important it was for her to be here today, that this was part of her self-care. I thought that was really beautiful. We talked a little bit about grief and mourning, and how education can really help with that, but also being just mindful of perspective. One individual shared, when they started doing their research, and, her husband looked at this list of symptoms and was kind of overwhelmed, like, oh my gosh, look at all of these symptoms I'm going to have. And her perspective was a little bit of the other, of saying, well, look at all these symptoms you don't have. So I just thought that was so interesting, and just kind of talking about focusing on today and what we can do today and what we're capable of today, and kind of being grounded on the present moment. And then also the support groups and the way we connect, and also having local support, those individuals kind of helping us prepare for change. And then when changes happen, physically, cognitively, emotionally, that we're better prepared, and that we not lower, but we change our expectations, and that we think of ourselves as partners, and that we're on the same team, and just kind of that mindset of getting kind of buy-in and focusing a little more on gratitude. Those were some of the themes from our group.
It's great.
Thanks for sharing, Carla. And just being mindful of our time, I don't think we're going to be able to hear from every group, but we'll hear from 2 or 3 more. Would love to hear from Jessica.
I will reiterate, just like everyone was saying, I had a wonderful group. People were really, open to sharing, which was so nice. But some of the main themes that came out was that it's very important to make space for yourself and keep those social connections. Another person talked about journaling, which was a way that they, were kind of coping with this. The biggest theme throughout our group was that you're not alone, and to really find and seek support, right? So seek support through either a support group or even through your community hospital, right? Look for programs and how helpful these programs were to these individuals. And the last kind of question I kind of posed at the end of the group was, is there something positive that you can say about this journey, right? Because that's a tough question. But a couple people spoke up, and I thought it was actually very touching. So one of the people in the group is now going to start a pedaling for Parkinson's group, right? So that is so wonderful. And then another one was talking about how they are so much more aware of, people's needs, and if someone needs help, and just kind of being more aware of maybe people who are not as able-bodied or things like that, but even just being a little bit more empathetic and aware, just because of their experience, with this Parkinson's journey. So a big thank you to my group. So.
Thank you, Jess. And we'll hear from one more group. Let's do like a random. How about Tanya? Tanya, anything to share?
Absolutely. So our group, just something that stood out to me, we had a discussion, part of our discussion around counseling or support groups, and people just share some such valuable information. One thing was having maybe multiple support groups that you attend, and that they may serve a different purpose. So something that inspires you, a group, one that's more educational, and being able to just go and get what you need from the various support groups. So I thought that was just a wonderful nugget that was shared. And then also around that is the stronger you are, the more that you give to your loved one with Parkinson's, the more you need that support and that counseling. So just a wonderful, rich conversation, but that's something that I'd like to share today.
Thank you for sharing, Tanya. And I do apologize for not having more time to hear from everyone, and want to be sure that we respect everyone's commitment to our time today. And so, Brad, I'll step away and let you make some conclusionary remarks.
Yeah, what a great day. All of the remarks that we just heard from the moderators echoed what we talked about in our breakout. And I'm just going to highlight a couple of those points. I think grief was a common theme that came up. And one thing that I'm going to share on that is however you feel is okay, right? Should I feel guilty for the way that I feel and the struggles that I'm going through? However you feel is okay. And it's accepting that. So that's one thing that I think is important for everyone to understand. The other thing that has been common throughout the day today is the role of support groups. Whatever that looks like, it's having other people to connect with. I believe a problem shared is a problem lessened. So as we talk about the things that we struggle with, those struggles become less. And altruism, helping other people, helps us grow. Exercise. And there are a lot of things that fall under this bucket of self-care. Exercise is simply one of those, but it's taking care of me, because I can't take care of them effectively if I'm not well. So remember that it's okay and it's needed to take care of yourself. And I'm going to end with the last piece, and I heard it mentioned multiple times, is let's not forget to be grateful. Right? All of the things that we deal with on a daily basis, there are lots of struggles. And whichever thing I focus my attention on is how I'm going to feel. If I focus on my problems, if I focus on my struggles, I'm probably going to have stress. But if I focus on the positives, I'm probably going to feel better. And so I need to be reminded that for me, it's a choice. What do I focus on? And just remember to think I still have things to be grateful for. So this has been a wonderful day, wonderful opportunity to interact. And I told my group, I hope that you walked away with one pearl, one thing today that you can leave with and say, I'm glad I was on that today. I have something that's going to help my journey. So thank you, Krista and the Parkinson Foundation, for an excellent program today. And I'm going to kick it back to you.
Thanks so much, Brad, and want to thank everybody who joined us for today's presentation. The following remarks will include resources to tap into beyond today's programming, and want to encourage you to join us for the next few sessions that we have for Care Partner Summit throughout the month of November. On November 6th, we're having a summit that is directly related to those of you who are new to the Parkinson's community. So if this is something new to you, please join us on the 6th. We'll have a webinar on Wednesday, November 6th, and tying in more tools on November 20th. We'll be speaking more directly to those tools and those tips that have been mentioned throughout the chat, throughout us sharing out in the main group of what has been essential in your toolbox of navigating Parkinson's disease. We also want to highlight our newest publication. When a loved one's diagnosed with Parkinson's, we know it can bring unexpected changes that may involve learning new skills, adjusting daily routines, as we've heard throughout the day, and navigating emotional ups and downs. Every care partner's journey is unique. That is one thing that we are certain about after having these conversations together. We're excited to introduce our new Care Partner Guide. It's designed to offer support and encouragement. It features 5 wellness keys with practical tips, insights, activities, and resources to help care partners at every stage of your journey. You can view or download the guide in the PD library at parkinson.org/library, and print copies will be available to order from the online store in December. The Parkinson's Foundation is proud to offer PD Health at Home, a virtual program series designed to provide education, wellness, and community support directly to your home. Each week, we host a variety of sessions tailored to enrich the lives of those impacted by Parkinson's and you, the care partners. Meditation has been mentioned a lot here, so I want to personally invite you to Mindfulness Mondays, where we tap into different types of meditation. You'll hear from different voices sharing this practice of mindfulness in the Parkinson's journey. Yeah, and you can check out the website there at parkinson.org to see what's coming up, or if you prefer to watch at your leisure, you can scan the QR code to watch our archived recorded videos on our YouTube channel. The Parkinson's Foundation is proud to be a partner in a new NIH-funded study exclusively for family caregivers of people living with Parkinson's disease with cognitive change, hallucinations, or dementia, or people with Lewy body dementia. This study, called Persevere, is entirely virtual, so caregivers can participate from the comfort of their own home, office, or even on the go. Persevere was created to try to understand whether and how a disease-specific caregiver-centered educational intervention can improve caregiver knowledge, confidence, strain, and health outcomes. You can learn more about the study by visiting the Persevere website here, scanning the QR code, or emailing the study team. And we'll put the link in the chat for you all to access. And finally, since our founding, the Parkinson's Foundation has funded more than $449 million in groundbreaking research and care. And since 2010, we've provided 678 scientists with research grants helping to transform the way we diagnose and treat Parkinson's. PD Generation, Mapping the Future of Parkinson's Disease, is a global research study that provides genetic testing and genetic counseling at no cost for people diagnosed with Parkinson's disease. By joining PD Generation, you can discover your individual connection to the disease while helping map the future of tomorrow's breakthrough. So please share this opportunity for advancing research towards a cure with your loved one living with Parkinson's. We've also added that link into the chat for you as well. And again, one more thank you. It is because of you showing up here today, celebrating your own strength, your own willpower, and recognizing the need for support, that you are not alone, and taking the time just for you. I want to celebrate that. If you have any questions that did not go answered today, or if you're curious about our resources, our helpline is staffed by Parkinson's specialists. Please do not hesitate to call them. The phone number is there on the screen. Email works great too, so if you prefer writing, you can email us at helpline@parkinson.org. And our website is 24 hours, so if there's a question, you want some information, go to our website at parkinson.org. Until soon, my friends, may you be well, may you be present, and may you find some gratitude and joy today. Be well.